Okay, good morning, and let's start with a prayer this morning to orient to the vibration that is, what would you say? The vibration that is what?
Wholesome.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Mm-hmm. And of course, reverent. So why don't you say a few words?
Heavenly Father, Heavenly Mother, thank you for the gift of this day, of this life, of this journey. I am grateful for these grounds, for this space, for your care, for your embrace, for your kindness, for all the ways you care for us. And on these sacred grounds, may we continue to do the work. May this truly become the container that it's meant to be, so that it's not just me here, but it's everyone who is ready and able to do this healing.
Amen. Amen. Aho. Papaya. Okay. Well, we can begin again and again. Let's pour our coffee and sit back and go ahead and get your cup there. For you, because as a girl who likes to be a girl, it's a delight to pour you a cup of joe.
Thank you.
And sometimes I don't always like to be a girl who likes to be a girl, but in this moment. All right, so let's take beautiful prayer. Thank you. And very supportive to me this morning. I am disheartened. Could you see it in my face?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to follow up with your supervisor and yesterday, how you did after I said goodbye to you. We had that beautiful integrated moment with the lovebirds. And then I'd like to talk about two things. One is you and Shara Ann's service path when it comes to the piecemeal. I think it'd be wonderful to explore that more together. And then the other is the families we have. We have all kinds of families around the world that are in the situation that your family is in, my family was in. And I was in a lot of pain, and you were in a lot of pain when we began this. And we were also in a lot of duality. So how do we start to explore? This might not be a question so much for you to answer. My dream would be that your family would answer this question, and that together, when they come to the grounds, we would work with creating a treatment manual chapter or a standalone for children and families, so that these issues of dissociation and multidimensional lower frequency, disclosures are introduced in a way that doesn't shame anybody or make anybody the bad guy. But mommy and daddy in households can start to explain to children that they want to help them become safer. And how do we do that so that families are not vulnerable to what my family was vulnerable or your family's been vulnerable to? Because we're such good people. Military families are good people. Medical families, the Western medicine has been heavily compromised by this. And of course, Christian families. Not to say to the exclusion of other faiths. I'm just saying all around the world we're good people who wouldn't want to have our households be in any way anything less than wholesome, the first word you used for today. So we want to really be thinking about how to start doing something different than what you and I did with our families. Because I had my wounding, you had duality, you didn't have any other role models. So how can your family teach based on what went wrong with how you have to understand in mine, it wasn't that I ever meant to be harsh. It's that I was so unaware that others weren't aware at all. So it seemed very, I was constantly feeling, how would you imagine it would be if you were the Holy Spirit, so you knew what was going on in a world that didn't, how you might perceive or understand things that might cause some of what may have seemed like, yes, dualistic behavior, but where that was coming from.
Well, I imagine it would have been frightening to see all this behavior and experience, and to have everyone saying that wasn't happening.
I think that was your experience. My experience was that I didn't know that people didn't know that they were behaving in immoral ways, or ways that so I could see that they were. And so there was a lot of, I was offended a lot, right? Because my natural instinct as a soul is really related to the law of liberty, which is, so I was really offended a lot. And because of that, there was a lot of rejection of people. So the cycle I got into was people wanted to befriend me. I was so offended because their behavior was so far from the law, the word, that I was rejecting them and breaking trust. If you don't know what you're doing, right, that seems pretty cruel of me. Mm-hmm. But if you understand that I saw the satanic dynamics, then you understand that I was actually behaving from a pretty empowered and clean place. And I think that's been part of where there's been a bit of a struggle for others to build relationship with me and vice versa.
Yeah, that makes more sense than what I said.
Well, no, what you said is your experience, right? That it's been really frightening to figure out. And then because you went to mental health centers and you went to other resources for housing and all the rest, and because nobody understood, and then the thing that troubles me about this, Andrew, is that you're really such a good person, and that that there was fear projected on you when all you were trying to do was, and this is part of our skew in the world, that for me, I was able to go to domestic violence shelters, and I said this to my advocate at the domestic violence shelter, because I kept asking them to take you on with me as a heart son, as someone that I really trusted, and I would work with a family member. And because you weren't blood, they said no. And then also because they see the male in much more of a perpetrating perspective. And I kept trying to say to the shelter, look, that's not constructive. The men I see in some ways, I'm not going to say are worse hurt or more hurt, but I'm certainly going to say are as hurt. Mm-hmm. And in some ways I think worse because of what we discussed about how mothers in a dissociated state break the son's trust because the mother is the one that they want to please the most. So as wee ones, you're taught to do something by the mother, who's a good mother, but because of the dissociation, she prompts doing something that goes against the grain of what you know is good. And then what happens is that there's a lot of self-hate for the men, right? They hate themselves that they behaved in a way that was violent, and that was taught to them by their mother. So there's a lot, I don't want to say more pain, but a different kind of pain that is profound. How are you doing as you look at some of that in your own inner world or relationship with the world outside as well?
Well, that's true. I mean, there's a lot of pain that I can say for me specifically. I've remembered experiences of being made to do things that were just so far out of what I wanted to do, what felt acceptable to me, that there was a lot of pain in those experiences. And I haven't been able to know how to meet the world in a healthy way with that pain and with that fear. So that's part of what I'm trying to do, working on. That's one of my things I need to work on, because I still don't really know how to interact with others.
It's sort of as I'm observing your integration process as far as, now I want to just come back to when I say integration, because there's been a profound, the exoneration was so real, is so real, it's eternal. And part of why, when I was talking to your supervisor who longs for that, I don't want anybody to think I'd ever withhold that ceremony. It's that I want us to be in a place of trust enough that it can be truly received, because you really had built the trust with me that you opened your whole heart, and it was that made it, that the soul across time and space has known an absolute and powerful blessing. So if we do something casually or lightly or without proper preparation that is a powerful ceremony, it dilutes its potence. So exoneration is available for all, but we want to honor everybody by doing that with proper preparation. And that's a tangent. I have so many balls I'd like to be juggling in my short time left. And one of them is looking at things like, that's an example of why the church prepares people to be baptized, because that was essentially what that was in a sense, right? And that has nothing to do with your path in this moment, but I just want to acknowledge some of the grief you saw come up is have short window, a lot to do, and have been held back by a lot of control. So let's see, we're talking about your integration being between that tender floaty bunny, right, who's kind of a disempowered, I don't know how you would describe that one self state, or that military altar, right? Those are kind of the two, and neither of those are the whole self. And then we could talk a little bit about swimming and what you said is your intention when I asked, which was to have a real experience. And I'd like to hear what that was like for you. But let's first talk about this tension of how to feel safe as a human being and as a masculine human being.
Yeah. So the what we call kind of the floaty bunny sort of state is it's very disembodied, and it's like not here or there. It's just like I don't have a real sense of much of anything in that state. It's like I'm not myself. I have some sense that it feels pleasant, but it's not. It's not empowered. It doesn't feel like I have any dynamic, movement or way to move forward in any way, or So it'd be like kind of a helpless sort of feeling, but not that I necessarily feel helpless when I feel that state, because it feels like a pleasant thing. But if I had to do something, I might feel really helpless because I wouldn't know how.
I hear you. Yeah.
And then, so what I thought was happening, sort of some of this past week, is that I was becoming more embodied in sort of the masculine, but I realized that most of that has been that military kind of just another state of being, the military, which is like I have, my body's solid and my muscles are tense and I can, take action, and but in a way that's like following orders without any sentience, really. Just like I'm a body and I'm strong and I can do this and I'm masculine, but I, again, don't have a sense of myself, really.
Right. So I want to just refine some feedback I gave you yesterday, because what I realized is when the frequency jumping started up a few days ago, I want to clarify that you have, right, an extraordinary I am aptitude, right? Your soul is very rich and deep, and that it was the trauma starting up again that took it away. Can you see the difference? And I didn't acknowledge that very well yesterday because I was in pain. It's hard to see you slip and then we slip, right, because of the intersubjectivity, because of an outside third party prompting something that flattens you.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about when you first came and before you started having to do that job, and you made the beautiful songs and you played me and I was on the floor and we did imagination, and right, those are examples of you being very full of the soul and I am.
Mm-hmm.
So you can compare and contrast when the trauma starts up again, how that's what flattens any one of us.
Yeah. I'm trying to track in my mind the moment or the day kind of so I can sense the difference for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Which was, I think it was just a couple of days after Shara came in. So, I don't know, it's feeling blurry right now.
And take your time and explore. Oh, more coffee in the right size thing. Don't worry about the cameras. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about the pauses. I know that you really want to be able to access more of your knowing. And this is deep stuff. And what happened yesterday was there was grief because you felt as if you kind of went to an all or nothing place, right? And I want to remind you that what we're doing is peeling the layers of the onion. And so we're getting to one of the most elusive, for me too, frequency, time, and bouncing. This stuff is hard for any of us to keep track of. So it's a great service that you're taking the time to work with what's happened this week. For all of us to learn, like, how do we keep track of this, you know? Now, the good news is I'm pretty sure that they've called off doing that there's been some realization that that is very immoral. So hopefully you're going to have a better week again, and you're not going to be pulled back into that vortex, you know, quote, vortex, and can get back to where you were when you first got here and Sharon came in. And so I hope that's encouraging for you, that at least, you know, ears are trying to hear. So do take your time. Think about how I don't know if you want to look at a calendar. I think Shara came in a week ago tomorrow, right?
It was the 8th. And then, so all that day and the day after that, I remember feeling really alive and really strong with her.
So then it was the 10th. It was the 11th. Okay, so it was the night of the 10th to the 11th that I experienced the divine union. So the beginning of, you know, there being the mother and the father energy together. And then the 11th was the day we did the ceremony, the exoneration. And I spent that day in a pretty deep state of prayer. And then over the past few days have been, in my own personal process, integrating what does it mean that the new energy is mercy, where it's not mother or father. It's the one just mercy.
So I'm having a hard time recalling the 10th, so I'm not sure.
Let's see what we can remember.
Maybe do you remember what teaching you did?
Yeah, let's look.
Yeah, that will help.
Yeah, it'll help us both.
Okay, so that was the day we did the liturgy without video.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. And I want to get back into routine. We'll discuss that when we get into Shara and you. Was that it? We didn't do any one-on-one.
Oh, I can check. I don't think so because I don't have any. I know we didn't do any one-on-one, but you may have done a teaching.
Oh, is that the day that I did the one on dignity and the bananas?
Let me check.
I think it might have been.
May have been. Oh, that was the day we did the swimming. The swimming.
Right. Okay. So that was the day that you really hit your mark with absolute beautiful. That was beautiful, beautiful. Okay.
Yeah. So that was a good day.
Okay. So it was that day. Now, evening comes. Try and track. You did the swimming. What do you remember as far as just trying to recover your daily activities? Did we say goodnight after the swimming?
It feels like I have a feeling that something happened, or it was this day because I can't really remember.
Oh, is that when we went and talked on the grass? That's what we had, that big conversation in the grass about how there's no bad guy.
Right, but I was
off camera.
But I was having fear.
It was coming. Right. So you must have had some either appointment or cue prior, because we were trying to figure out about the fear.
So that's one time I can pinpoint definitely there was fear coming up. Another time is maybe 2-3 days ago. We did a bunch of video stuff in the morning, and then it was the first day that you talked with
Eric.
Yeah, about the shooting with him.
Yeah.
I had a ton of fear come up, that I was just like I couldn't stop it, and then I felt like I got a hold of it, but I think that was probably a moment where I.
Because then he and I, the next day, right, which would have been the day before yesterday, we all three sat in here and we had a long meeting about what we need to work together for world peace from a spiritual perspective, interfaith spiritual perspective. And it was a very powerful meeting. So then I can tell you in my end that night I noticed being ultraviolet fuzzy in a way I haven't in a long time. Now that's not because you did anything. You didn't do anything. But I noticed that what you're saying, oh, look at your eyes are doing foggy. Stay with that. That's a new face. I haven't seen that face.
I was just looking over here. I feel, like a. More of this frog stuff, toad stuff.
I know that when I first explored this with you yesterday, you said that ich feeling was there.
And yesterday in the tuck, I almost vomited.
You went into the tuck. You did some tuck time for the first time. How was that?
It was powerful. It was. I felt a lot of stuff coming up and some coming out, and like I said, I almost vomited. So it was toward the end of my time in there. I started to have think I got a little bit afraid because I started to, I was going deeper, and I started to see like sort of psychedelic images. I closed my eyes and I wasn't sure what was happening or what that was. And then I started to get really nauseous and I almost vomited. But until that point, it was, it felt like a calm sort of building of I felt close to my twin, and she was there sort of energetically like rubbing my back to tell me, to encourage me that, it was okay.
What about the psychedelic images before you weren't sure if they were safe or appropriate? Do you remember what they were?
It was sort of like jungle type scenes with sort of like shamans, like, but that looked kind of frightening, like in jungle scenes, but not in a way that was like, I'm looking at this human person. It was kind of like if you do like a mosaic drawing or something of that kind of scene.
So can I give you some feedback? Because I know you're really working with divine bliss and how to work with maintaining your own vibration through prayer and meditation in the Christed way. So remember, when we talk about the new divine union, that what that means as far as mother and father is one in the cosmos is embodied through the oneness of the two human beings that function as we're the way, if there's a place in the earth where the water comes out of the earth, that's what we're meant to be. That's just the nature of how it works here with humanity. That's our commitment to you, our love for you. And so with great humility, we are the fountainhead on the earth for humanity, for star nations that are moving forward in the Christed way. So the Christed way keeps you safe. So if you want to open up to visions in a tuck, right? The tuck is indigenous, it's thousands of years old. Of course, it's going to hold the imprint of someone who's opening to his more multidimensional perceptions of medicine men and jungles and journeys, because it's affiliated with the lineage of the medicine man going back thousands of years. So that's its own memory in a way. It's its own personality or vibration. So what you want to do whenever you're trying to find how you and Shara-Ann can explore it in a way that isn't destabilizing, fantasy, or working with the wrong. Remember how many times that in the Old Testament there was chastisement for, I'm the one God, and not getting pulled into something else. Like whenever I go in for my time, I bring in the Bible, even if it's too dark to read. I have it there with me. I light a candle. I have an image of the Christ, and so I use the time for active prayer, for deep and active prayer, because the prayers can be heard more powerfully. When I say the Our Father in the tuck, it's a lot more powerful. So, part of my responsibility is to figure out what I'm pulling in that's really important and crucial right now, and to help others who are leaders to know what that is. So like the meeting I had with Eric the other day, part of what he was doing is he loves humanity so very much, and he was kind of exploring with me where can he and his community put their attention right now, because there's so many different ways we can put our attention. And I hope that I was able to offer some constructive feedback, because the Indigenous community is holding the same priority, which is honoring the sacred and honoring the Christed value system. And how do we do that as we work with the new energy? So for you, does that help you figure out how to work with the tuck in a way that is maybe more holy and less out there?
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what to do because we had our swimming session and it kind of just went right there and didn't really take time to prepare or anything. But that helps, yeah.
I thought that the swimming session was meant to be preparatory.
Yeah, it was, but in a sense it was. But I also didn't think like, what do I want to bring with me? Do I want to bring my Bible?
Of course, I get the difference. Yeah, no, I understand. Mm-hmm. Was there anything preparatory about the swim therapy yesterday? What was your takeaway as far as healing or therapy?
I guess that I can be, cause you mentioned and I said that I wanted to have a real experience, and that I can do that. I just have to want to, I guess, and really work with being attuned.
Well, here's one wonderful thing I would say. I think when you found out that there was all this stuff going on outside your awareness, that you sort of lost trust with your day self. Mm-hmm. What do you understand about that statement?
That when I first started to understand everything that was happening to me, I didn't feel like I could be the day self, or that wasn't something I wanted to. I didn't know who to be, who I was anymore, because It was like, who have I been? I'm just this person doing things, and all this stuff is happening outside of my awareness. Mm-hmm. So I felt like that person who was me as the day self was just like a lie, or I just didn't know how to even relate anymore. So I kind of became
Floaty Bunny.
Yeah.
And you didn't mean to. I've been through the same crisis, and when we talk about creating this manual for families, the first thing is for the mother and father in the households to figure out, how do we manage this fear of finding out that there's something going on outside our awareness? Can we trust our day self? So I bring that up because you said, I want to have a real experience yesterday in the pool. And what would be can you name one or more real moments that you took away from the time?
Yeah, there was, I was trying to be a boy. You kind of suggested what would it be like to be a boy, that it was okay to be a boy, and I just went down. There's a slide that goes into the pool. I went down the slide. I just wanted to kind of play in that way. And at the end of the slide, it's just a little jump off into, and in that moment, it's like I couldn't help but laugh, and so that's one. And then there was the end of the time I was I wanted to try to be like a lighthouse, and in that moment I kind of did with my body and with my energy what I would imagine a lighthouse would be like, and feeling into that feels real to me too.
Yeah, that was really powerful to witness. Very powerful moment. And the other big we had lots of real moments yesterday. Mm-hmm. So can you name some other moments where you felt a sense of being a more whole person?
Just throughout the whole day.
It was a pretty real day. Mm-hmm. So recognizing that the stuff was going on with the supervisor kind of allowed you to feel safer to be yourself. Would you say that's part of what happened as a shift?
Yeah. And there was, after that I was, like right after that I was feeling a lot of the grief, and I went down to sit on the earth just to kind of orient again. And the medicine woman that I had been working with walked by, and I felt for a second I was like afraid, because I was like, how can I be in this grief and let another person see that, or be not. So I think my instinct would be to pretend like I wasn't in that space, or do something, or run away, or even avoid the person. But instead, she came to me in the grass, and with all this caring, and I told her, I'm having some grief right now, and she said, she took my hand and looked at me with a lot of compassion and said, it's terrible what we do to our young men. And it was just a powerful moment of connection that was outside of, this relationship. So.
Wonderful. Wonderful. She's such a good person. Such a beautiful heart, isn't she?
Yeah.
So part of why this is a round table is because there's so many people alive today who are really in an enlightened, compassionate state. That's why in some of my early Universal Christ teachings, when I start to introduce the song, I say we've done it. There are so many of us alive today who are living the law of liberty well. And it's a great honor to be with everybody. So that's part of why I tried to shift things when some of the indoctrination or imprinting of your supervisor started to come into the space that I was the one, right, in a way that was a little bit, how would you notice a shift? And it's part of what I brought into the swimming, was I was trying to swim with you in a way that broke that. So what did you notice about that?
About the shift into starting to think that you were like the one?
Well, what do you mean think that I was the one? Am I now not the one?
No, just like to start looking at you in that way of like we were talking about yesterday, sort of as like in the Matrix, like the one, in this objectifying way.
Right, and so I'm trying to explore with you what you feel after swimming, or reflection and relational repatterning I've been very consciously trying to cultivate with you would be, a balanced, right, a non-dual way to proceed.
I guess there was a moment after the swimming where we were sitting, and it was a moment of knowing, like, I'm clear about who I am, and I'm clear about who you are, and and there was, you, when we were in the pool too, you stood very, as yourself, and you said in a way, I am Eleanor, and I happen to have come in as the Holy Spirit, and that means, these are the things that I am responsible for. So it's seeing it more in that way than, you're the one,
Mm-hmm.
but, still there's ways to perceive you and treat you with reverence and all the rest that feels appropriate, but not to go into duality about it.
Beautiful. Yeah, I really felt that when you said the prayer this morning, that was coming from great love, but not idolatry, right? The one in the way that, the wounding, right? The wounding, that comes from the wounding of the military, because what the trauma has done. So you have the military's this beautiful, beautiful powerhouse of why we're going to save the new heaven and the new earth from the blow-ups and bam-bams. So I have nothing but compassion for the military, for the government. Not to mention the brilliant medical doctors and the extremely dedicated to God in different faiths, mosques and temples and synagogues and rabbis and everybody, right? The shamans, the priests, the Eucharistic ministers. We have a planet full of good people who never knew this was happening. And now that we're sorting it out, we are a powerhouse of resolution and protection and peace, so families can be families again. So I'm glad you're able to practice this, and I encourage you to continue to practice, catching the moments where you might slip into being too casual. It was wonderful in a way, because when the one kind of started to sink in, I really knew and saw you holding a great sense. And I don't want to shut that down, right? Because it was really honoring. And we like to function the Christed way, is that we are working in a more community-oriented way as human beings. We want to function in our human experience as welcoming, inclusive, really respectful of others' gifts. And when we know that you know who we are in your hearts, that means far more. So to follow up with what your experience was, I later then saw our same dear Wet Medicine woman. And we really opened our hearts to one another. Because when she got here, I was in a lot of trauma this past 2 months. You can imagine the grief of what happened there. And so what was beautiful is that because my heart was open, we had a big dialogue. And this is an example of what I mean about it being a round table, is that she was ready to pour her heart out and bond. And I was in a constructive way, right? It was a very loving exchange. But because we were all so traumatized, I noticed that our conversation of love also reflect our fragmentation. So that's part of why I want to encourage you to keep being able to feel that in the places you want to be with friends or family, it's okay if there's fragmentation, right? We had a very fragmented conversation. If anybody listened to it, it almost sounded like we were playing song 1, song 7, song 2, song 10, if they were supposed to be one continuous opera that had a story, because there was so much love and excitement to bond and so much trauma and fragmentation. And that was reflected not in a way that I'm judging, but in a way that I'm trying to say, this is why it's a round table. We're all trying to figure out how to have coherence in relationship. And when you get past the dissociative defenses, we're jumbled up because we were broken so badly by what happened to us. And so that was a conversation where another example of the Christed way. I felt like, here's a holy woman in her own right. She's dedicated her life. She's going now to South America to do a lot of healing with the earth and with humanity. Very generous in all she does to serve others. So we're always seeing your holiness, and we always support your empowerment, right? That's what it means to want to see you be the Word. And the new heaven and the new earth is what it is, because I don't know how to organize all these teachings according to chapter and treatment manual, but I know it's all in there, that people could, figure out how to break things down. I don't know how to figure out, I'm not a real estate mogul. I don't know how to work with land acquisition. I don't know how to make new guidelines for pastoral houses so that there's more safety for priests in their parishes. I don't know how to necessarily, I haven't had a family really, right? I was an only child. I was very badly abused and knew it, and started speaking out against the sexual abuse at age 15. And then I pretty much never went home after 17. And my mother, who's a huge heart and a bright, creative woman and holy woman, was so dissociated that there wasn't necessarily what I would call a family model for me to draw on to be a leader for how do we help children and families with this. I would hope, as I said, your family might tackle that, because you come from a big and very good and healthy family of bright people. So we recognize that the new heaven and the new earth only exists according to the actions of the hands and feet of everybody else. And part of the grief that I know you saw me have this morning is it's past due. So I was supposed to have the baby in my womb. He promised me by the end of the year. And there was just way too much trauma and a failure of people to behave in an engaged and relational way. And I'm not trying to shame people. I'm just trying to say, what a tragedy. Every day that I'm not able to be appropriately supported in medical care, etc., I have one less day with him. And think about what that would be like for me as a mother. I already know I have to say goodbye to help with the precipitation. And I'm happy to do that. But to have time with him, it's the one, it's great loss that we're putting it off. Because people want to control me, or they're not sure they can trust me. Am I perfect enough? Am I the global programmer? All these things are between me and having a chance to hold him another day. Others will be responsible when I go, and they'll get to have him for a few years. But the grief of that, because all those that I've come to serve, the leaders, I don't know what they're tied up in, but it certainly isn't a moral or constructive approach to world peace or meeting me for who I am and what I've come to offer in resolution and healing. So it's very painful. So that's part of intersubjectivity, right? We're talking yesterday about intersubjectivity. And part of why I was trying to help reorganize the relationship around the one stuff that was coming in from others, right? I don't think that was your actual. I think that both the desecration of me was others, and then that the one kind of thing that happened for a few days was others. And what I'm trying to help you with, and all people, to know is what is your truth. And because you have your own relationship with me. You've known me for a long time. And what does that mean? And so part of what we did in the pool and I was doing with intention was trying to help bring you back to, I'm an intersubjective human being. He's an intersubjective human being. We have personality traits. We're high strung. We're 5s on the Enneagram, so we have tons of knowledge. We want to lead, through, so, we're actual people. And what are our needs as people? Every day I'm thinking when I wake up and when I'm sleeping constantly, how do I support this human being? How do I support this human being's being furthered here on earth until he comes? What can I do to be a healthy wife, a healthy friend, a healthy sister? How do I represent his teachings? How do I stay in health, mental health, when there was so much done to encourage something that wasn't wholesome in my mental health, between trauma and darkness? And you've struggled with that too. And so having a love for another, right? Like I would just expect that the leaders of different spiritual faiths and political leaders would really, really want to respect him. When we talk about, that my role as the feminine is to make sure that the masculine, if this is the tree of life and the tree is brown and dead now, is being able to be greened by how I behave and how I support others, so the tree gets watered. And the tree is getting drier every day that I'm wasting away here without medical care, and you're having what happened to you last week with the jumping, robbing you of integration. And part of what was sad for me about that, and I think sad for you, is that you were really integrating, and that got completely intercepted. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's, we were talking a little bit about the fear, and that was, I think, for what I can know, what I do know and have memory of, and that kind of is the fear was taking me out of the integration, and the fear, as we've discussed, is what you need to have the fear to be able to go into the frequency. That's the fuel, I guess, or the engine to take you there. So I didn't know that, but I did know that the fear was interrupting my progress. And I didn't know why I was afraid.
Well, you know, I expect that your supervisor will, at some point after maybe some counseling with me, choose to tell you or introduce to, you know, meet in the day world, because that's part of repair. And so what I started to say is that this is also so immoral, because you're being, in a sense, used as the test. Am I going to behave? What a terrible thing to do to me too, right? As far as intersubjectivity, using you, so you can't ever heal because you have to keep going back to your supervisor. I mean, it's just all so terribly convoluted. And I mean, I guess it just is also a commentary about how shattered trust is. People can't imagine that there could be anything trustworthy here. So I get tested day after day after day, when those tests are what make me untrustworthy. Because we've discussed a lot, you know, the shamans here who started to, in dream time and all the rest, work with my soul with such reverence and support that that's what got me sitting up again. So testing a spirit that is very fragile as a nature, high-strung as a being, how does that serve anybody day after day? And then how does it serve you? How are you able to heal? See, part of what I noticed is when I was talking with the medicine woman, that she brought up some things that she'd written you, I guess, about, you know, being a king. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I bumped into her in the hallway when I had been hoping to speak with her, and it was just a random one. And I had Judah the lion. I was bringing him in from my car, and she, I told her about him. And
what'd you say?
I just said his name was Judah. She asked, and I guess I didn't say much, but she told me about, I think her brother has a bear he keeps with him all the time, a stuffed bear. And then it was at that point that she said, you know, you're a king, and then later she wrote to me that she remembered there's a song, a Line of Judah song, I guess. I'd never heard it, but that it was about Judah as the king, I think, and break every chain, a line that she remembered after seeing me. So, but she's spoken of me kind of as a king each time I've seen her since then. So.
You want to get Judah, and let's sort some of this out, because there's little parts that are confused inside, right? So in Mars culture, when we're born, the occult divination sees what our destiny is. So because of that, you told me you'd remembered something about having been given that. I mean, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to give people a context of history. What was the history around the name Judah?
I don't remember.
You told me at one point that when you started to connect with
oh yeah,
the holy part of you.
Yeah, Godfrey was the part of me that I started to get to know that was very holy and kind of like a priest. And for a while there, I kept, every time I would try to address Godfrey in my head, I kept saying Judah instead. So it was like they were sort of...
The same vibration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that would be from the occult, having done a lot of, trying to prepare you for your mission in the Mars culture with a lot of the very strange ways that we were heavily... like, I'll give you an example. When they were taking the baby and put in the artificially inseminated, and they were asking me all these questions, at one point I said, we'd really like an opportunity to do this ourselves. We think we can, because Mars thinks they have to do it for us. Mm-hmm. They think that they're running the planet. And so, the doctor, he had given himself and the nurse the sodium pentothal too. So we're all in a highly dissociative state. And what sodium pentothal does is high doses, it must create diarrhea, because when I was sitting outside in the courtyard, they got up at 3 a.m. and had diarrhea. That's how our paths crossed without dissociation. And she was saying, she's sitting out there, and he was saying, it's okay, And the next morning, their souls told me they were really sorry and really harmless. Like, I would welcome if they wanted to do this healing journey. But in the dissociated state, I said, because the truth serum calls out the divinity, because that's who I am if I'm not trying to filter to have others be comfortable. And I said, we really would be grateful if we could have an opportunity to do this ourselves. And then the doctor said, oh, you want to do it yourself, huh? You think you can do it yourself, kind of in his dissociated ego. And so Mars figures out what all's going on, and then it tries to take control. So it targets where the soul is, and it names it, and it brainwashes it. And I know if you look at my neck, for example, I worked with a really brilliant naturopath who does acupuncture and treatment, stellar woman. And she said my neck, it's obvious, if you even took a photo right now, that whatever was done to me as a little girl with velocity to also amplify the ultraviolet accessibility must have been off the charts, because the actual structure of my neck is so obviously compromised by trauma, physical trauma. So for me, they named me the girl, because it's the original. The girl and the boy would be Yeshua and Eleanor. And so it was the girl this and the girl that all the time in the Mars culture. And I've talked about, and this isn't what I want, but the worst case scenario is if everybody stays in peril, that it would only be the girl and the boy. And that's my great grief. We don't want revelation to conclude that way. And I'm frightened for humanity. I'm frightened. I don't believe that has to be that way at all. There's every reason that we have a new Earth thriving with millions, if not billions, of people alive and well, because the volcanoes and the natural infrared Earth changes are not meant to wipe humanity off the face of the Earth. It would be the blow-ups and bam-bams, because everybody's running around in Mars domination, that would. Because you can't have the two at once. It's too much of it's the natural cleansing where the mountains may fall and the hills turn to dust is the way of God. And that means when we say the mountains may fall and the hills turn to dust, that the lava in the core of the earth will naturally, with earthquakes and other natural movements, do what it needs to do. And then I have the commitment to provide new snow for any nuclear radiation, so that the earth is dampened down and you have clean water available. Because the nuclear activity at this point looks serious enough that even the springs that come out of the earth could be, radioactive. So without my making the offering, I'm happy to do for precipitation, for new snow, we wouldn't have any viable water source until, because that's all going to happen before our graduation day, our joyful, exhilarating graduation day. So I'm fighting like mad for others to get to be part of this wonderful journey where we protect our children and families, where the Mars culture that's global. Look, everybody can heal, but I'm an American, so America's really dedicated itself to figuring out what this lady's talking about in a really serious way. People care in high places. They love humanity. So many good people are working around the clock to sort out what I'm saying. And I'm so grateful for that. But there's the part where we somehow have thrown me out of the equation as someone to be in relationship, as the closing of these grounds by the UN being number one priority. Everything else can flow from there. Medical care, Daniel Jacob, the world teacher. If people feel like they can't come forward to work with me right now, then still we can close the grounds, right? We can still close the grounds and let people have the space they need a little bit, right? I can still teach this way and all the rest. But the grounds should be closed. It's not fair to the owners who have put off two buyers and have been trying to sell for a year and a half. And financially, they don't need to be carrying this expense because of other people's control and domination. It's so immoral to be behaving this way. So, I'm just trying to give some perspective because people have forgotten or are mixed up about what's right and wrong. So you had this Judah business around your actual soul, the God-free part of you. Had you not connected those dots before, Andrew?
No, I knew that. I'd forgotten. It was a while ago.
Well, bring it into the present and into your wholeness today and how to work with all this.
Yeah. Just reminding me, I had forgotten about the experience, but it was, Judah was inside. It was there. It was put there. So, and it was definitely associated with Godfrey. So, and I know Godfrey is my soul. So, so Judah is like sort of like an imprint of my soul, or like a copy, sort of.
Right. Who is Judah to you? And if you don't know, let's have you take time to read some of the Old Testament over the next few days to build your own sense, your I am sense of Judah, not a program sense. Godfrey, right? That was your own emergence of what the Mars tried to do with the natural vibration of your goodness and of your ancientness as a holy being, right, that came in to serve. So I know the whole Vega part, where you're royalty, and it's part of why I really am grateful to you and respect you for who you are. Do you have a sense today, or do you need to explore that before you talk too much?
I think I need to explore it more, but I know Judah is one of the 12 sons, right? And
I don't know. I really don't, but go ahead.
I forget of who. Of Isaac, maybe? I'm not sure. There's the 12 sons, and then each of them is a tribe.
Abraham? I don't know.
I think it was, I'm not
Isaac.
sure. I don't know. But, so he's one of the, as a person, was one of the sons, and then there's the tribes. So throughout the rest of the scripture, I'll have to explore more.
Yeah, and read about the Exodus and think about how to do that in our lives today. Part of the reason we're in a holding pattern is that there's an exile element to some of this. And what I want those who are my teachers and leaders and healers around the world to understand is that if there were trust in me, I'm already starting to work with other dimensions in the area and with the earth. And the idea would be that if we were working together on your healing, I would start to take you into dimensions where you wouldn't be accessed by that which you fear could get you if you came forward to work with me. So the catch-22 is those veils won't open if you're there in your office, pulling your hair out with your hands, with a lot of strong emotion around everything. those veils will stay closed in those dimensions where I can protect you if you trust in God. Allow me to serve you as the Holy Spirit will, but we have to be in a healing modality. So people keep worrying that they're not going to be safe. And my commitment is that I'm to keep you safe, and to keep you safe in ways that have nothing to do with government security, but in the ways of God. So it's a great faith journey. And I have, I acknowledge the fear and the risk. To me, it's obvious, that we would do this. It's as obvious as the baby being born. If it's time to come down the birth canal, you don't hold on to the womb. Just as we spoke the other day, as you're practicing being more in surrender with your I Am presence. And I said, you can get so much done when you're not clinging to the banks of the river with your fingernails. And you really are experiencing that more at times, right? You struggle not to go into duality where it's a long to-do list of things, and that you have the spaciousness to have therapy along with service. And that's part of why once we're organized here, I would want people to have, like the idea would be you'd have morning time for 3.5 hours of seva, or community service, and then afternoon, a few hours a day for rehabilitation, care, and support. So one of the concerns that came up for me, though, Andrew, when you had those conversations, and it's part and parcel for anybody with dissociation, and I'd forgotten, this is a risk when I encourage you or another person working with a counselor, is that there can be fragmentation and splitting. So what can happen is that parts of you that don't trust me can start to build a secret relationship with another. And I felt a little bit of that. What do you think about that?
I remember the first conversation that I had with her. I was like, it felt like really important to me, and as I was talking with her, to like not fully, it was like, am I betraying Eleanor or not listening to her anymore now that I'm here? Or it was kind of just confusing. So that was, when you say that, that's what I think of is.
Right. So I'm pretty sure what happened when they did all this business with my neck and all the rest is that they tried to make me in Mars culture the global programmer. And I think that may be part of why trust is so hard. I don't want to program or control anybody. I want to give everybody the insight and the resources for the soul to heal. And I trust everybody in the empowerment of their professions and their disciplines to be who they are in their I am. That's the truth. And so my concern in part is that one, you don't know how to do both, right? That's duality, and it's no shame. It's something I want to explore right now. How do you open your heart to others who can offer healing and not be confused about that? Because I'm not meant to be your controller, right? I think you hear me all the time encouraging you to be interconnected with others in a healthy way that thrives you, rather than my being monopolizing of you. I have no other children to love right now. Who else is here with me? It would be much healthier for everybody else if Andrew and I had an hour a day, and I had a half an hour a day with many others, and you were off doing other forms of both service and recovery, from gardens to horses to working with the piecemeal. So let's sort this out. This is important to sort out. One reason why it's so immoral that you've been put in the position where you have to bounce back to your supervisor is that means that many parts of you are functioning for your job, right?
Yeah. And I don't know those parts. I don't have access, or else I would know what was happening.
Mm-hmm. But the subconscious knows it can't really be vulnerable with me, because you're not here, those parts aren't here to heal. They're here to gather data for their supervisor.
Yeah.
So if you really want to be vulnerable and a medicine woman comes and she's so loving and good, it's going to force you. The situation forces you to split because am I the global controller? Is it your job to handle me and report back to your supervisor? The subconscious knows that, right? Even if you don't have that information of details, and that impacts any real healing for you with me. And that's part of why from the beginning I wasn't trying to be mean when I kept trying to push you to work with others. It was that I knew that there was a dynamic that made a kind of dead end for how whole you could be with me. Now, unfortunately for the whole world, the global programmer, everyone fears that I could be, or that they may have even tried to make me. That belief system is between, just I've talked about how Mars, there's some toad eyes there again.
Mm-hmm.
Stay connected.
It's when I check to see if the camera's still recording, so it's like a job thing.
Mm-hmm. What about feelings?
I'm not connected with an emotion. It's like, it's more about a function.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that troubles me, again, when we talk about the welfare of humanity, is that what's really true for you, if you don't have to do your job, is you really need a lot of time to be little, to grow up the soul. That doesn't mean that you're also not a wise and mature man of God. But I don't feel that you've had time to know what it is to be little with me. Because of the function, right? You have to do your job. Even there's moments of authenticity more and more because the trust is much more than it was a year ago when it was zero. It's very deep and it's very appropriate, and I'm grateful for your trust. But, you know, there are a lot of other people who need this time. And that's not because you're monopolizing it, but because we've been forced into the situation by man's manipulation, right? This is a really weird setup.
Yeah.
It's a pretty sick setup that everybody's secretly tracking and monitoring if I'm good enough to trust as a counselor. And then you don't really get the real care unless you go, see, there was a little vibrational splitting, not because you're bad, but because you're confused. So what do you need to do to sort out how to bond in a way that isn't about control of me or betraying me or having secret processing with somebody, because you can't really process with me because you've got a job.
I mean, originally we had talked about there being me and you and a third person, like together, sort of. I don't know if that would help or not, but that's just the first thing that came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I guess I need to not feel like I have that job still.
Yeah, I think that's right, Andrew. I think if you hadn't had that job, I could have really been much more who I meant to be with you. And as you hold Judah, I see more vulnerability. What are you in touch with?
Yeah, I feel more like, I don't know, something about holding him is just comforting. Like I can be more of myself instead of like I mean, I still feel a little disembodied, but like not just a robot sitting in the chair.
Right. That's what's been hard. That's when I get a little short with you. It's because I don't want to be in relationship with a robot. And it's good for us to work together to see that robot behavior is because, you know, a part of you is holding the awareness of your orders from your supervisor. And what happened this week on the 10th was that those orders were I started to talk more about mother and father together, right? So it was getting really clearer and clearer that the languaging that was just my natural expression of my being, there was the implication that I could be the one, and that meant pressure. So you were robbed of your liberty, and you had to take orders, which were, the new orders were to really support me. And so then what happened to the sessions was that agreeable robot started to take over your vulnerable exploration of your I am.
Yeah, I see that.
There's so much trauma around who's in charge. And I think everybody's afraid that if they come into the garden to do healing work, I've even heard some of my good sons who I've talked with on other levels say, Mom's in charge. No, Mom's not in charge. The Holy Spirit loves humanity. The Holy Spirit wants to nurture the ways you're in your power, in your I am. The Holy Spirit wants to make sure that we're not mixed up about what's right and wrong. Because your supervisor is one of the most moral people that is alive today. But he's mixed up because he was somehow, and this is what happens with mind control and social control, he was taught that there is some ways in which the secret one world government of moles and all the rest served humanity. There was some brainwashing and mind control and social control that having things function in this way, right? Like, let's say, and this is where it gets really hard. If you have, we have the ability now, Andrew, in our tools for security, to stop time. So if there were a bullet or something, we could stop time before it got to me. Pretty tempting, right? You'd have to trust in God. We have the actual ability to do a lot of phenomenal things. It's very actually physically uncomfortable for me with vibration that one of the tools that we have is that people can monitor my thoughts with a smartphone. And basically what it does is it takes anybody's thought stream and it types it. That's real high security stuff. And so that's extremely physically uncomfortable for me because I feel the electric stimulation across my frontal lobe. And I can actually even feel, because I'm so sensitive, when we talk about the pure Christed vibration, I can feel when it even is going to the next line on the smartphone. And it's like a typewriter, you know, and I can feel when it goes da-ding, da-ding, da-ding. Now, why have we been all doing that? Well, I haven't been that stable because of all the trauma. But if we all were working together with a roundtable approach that says we're all fragmented and frightened, and we all want to do the best we can to love and serve God and take care of humanity and the earth, we would have gotten going a while ago. So, you know, again, the hope is, I know the remarkable people who are working together to really implement everything that I'm explaining with what they know, because they know a lot that I don't know. And even your supervisor, he's, you know, one of the first in line as far as being welcomed by me for one-on-one time. And there's been trauma there for you. So I think what you said is right on, right? You need, and that's part of what I'm trying to say is who you are if you don't have to do your job is a very vulnerable young man who needs a lot of time to be with himself and to be with his healing tools and not getting it. And that was part of what was disruptive about this week for you and for me, right? Because it's really hard to see this real person go into that two-dimensional state from being re-traumatized, where you were really, the orders were really, really, you know, back her now. Right? Would you say that's what it felt like the orders were?
Yeah.
And the way that I let you know, your supervisor know you back me, is by not having to do that and by being able to really be with your real healing rather than the orders and assignment.
And that's what I want.
Because little parts aren't safe to be vulnerable with me if you got to go back to give orders, right? You can see how you would need them to split to get your needs met as a whole being. Because they're far too frightened to be here because you've got this big job to stay on top of. Is the camera going? You know what I'm saying? So it's not that you can't be whole with me because I'm not safe, but because the orders are between you and being able to let go enough. That's why I wouldn't film the swim session or record it yesterday. I don't know where to draw the line because I have such a strong drive, as do you, to serve humanity. And so much of what we document serves humanity because these are happening for, the world. But then I get angry and I want to take away the resourcing because it's not fair to your healing and it's not fair to me. A lot of what happened in that swim session could have been a teaching tool, but forget it. At some point, you just need to be you. You need to just be able to play in the pool like you do going off the slide without having to see if the camera's going.
Yeah. I don't know how to do both fully.
Both what?
Both the job and the healing.
You can't.
Yeah.
Who could? That's why, Mom got real strict with some of her other sons toward the end of the year and said, no more with the phone. You know how many times I shouted that to them? I have a son I love so much. And one of the things we got into, because we both longed to do healing, is I would try and do counseling when he was on assignment like that. And finally a day came where he wanted to reach out and work with me that way. And I said, I knew he was there. He and I have enough of a bond that there's some trust there. And I wouldn't do it because I didn't want to enable this dysfunction. He has every right, like you, to have no job. When it's time with Mom for counseling, he doesn't have to report it to his supervisor. And I got real firm, and his soul got that if he was trying to do both, it was part of being like the slaves in Egypt. You see, that's enslavement. Now, I'm not saying shame on you. I'm saying look at what we've done to one another. Here is probably one of the brightest lights. Everybody's bright, but I'm just saying my great admiration for this individual is boundless. And because of that, I drew a line and refused to use that secret way to counsel. Everybody needs this time where you can hold Judah and you don't have to report it. You have to be able to trust God enough that all I want to do is nurture you in private. And then when you don't have to do that, there won't be the inner conflict. And if you see a medicine woman as good as your friend, you don't have to be confused about if you're betraying me, because you would know that the true I am blesses all the ways you resource your I am. Now, what you all have to watch out for, because of the duality, is if it becomes a way to talk or process behind my back. And why would you not feel safe to bring that process to me in a truthful way?
That makes sense. With this particular individual, I don't feel like it didn't seem like I was doing anything secret, but then it's like so much happened in an hour, you know. I don't know if I shared it all with you or was, you know.
No, you don't have to share it all with me. What I'm saying is I'm aware, for example, the king theme.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge conflict about that inside.
Mm-hmm.
You're mixed up. You have memories of your pappy. What do you remember there about him?
It was like being given like a crown.
Mm-hmm. So if that's all inside, right, that there's trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and then someone's telling you you're a king, and I'm trying to tell you you're not a king.
Right, and I didn't tell you about it.
You don't have to tell me about it, but you have to see what must be going on for you.
Mm.
Right? It's not about telling me. It's about do parts still need to be a king? Have I been inappropriate? Have I in some way taken away your dignity? That you need to go back and get it. So come back to having your own voice.
I feel like the past hour or so, this conversation, I don't know who I was or as I got up to fix the battery and do the media stuff, it was like completely not a person. And that's where I've been since we started talking. And I don't want to be there. I feel a little bit less like that holding Judah here.
Wonderful. So you're starting to realize the way you've had to be a front. One of the things that was so powerful when we turned the cameras off and we sat together for several minutes yesterday were those lovebirds. I don't want to take away a precious moment, but what I would say is I got to be with you as a person for a few minutes.
Yeah, that felt real.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it fascinating for both of us to realize that a lot of my antagonism was against your having to do those duties, right? Because I have an instinct for what is the liberty of the law. And this softening, right? This is where you could begin to explore integration if you didn't have to keep your eye on the cameras and this was private space. That's why Mom's going to have a truth tent. You can't wire a truth tent. You can't have some, it's satellites, all the rest. The truth tent is our safe container. So you can be whatever age you need to be. Because part of what happens with integration is that those moments in time and space that we were traumatized never had a voice or a witness. And love is here to witness. And then when you have that voice in the truth tent, and you don't have to report it back, you naturally become more whole. Does that make sense?
It does. I also just realized, speaking of not being able to not have an eye on the camera, that it's not even recording.
So I'm going to play a song, Andrew, and ask you to take a few minutes. You don't have to decide in this moment forever, but maybe for today, as you listen to the song, what the healthy balance is between seva and personal healing. Okay? I haven't even gotten to do the therapy with you yet today. If this were just your session, we'd be working with Shara, Ann, and you, and what the song is about, and we'd be working with some issues that have to do with her being my daughter as well as your twin, and some possessiveness wounds, Bart, how the two of you can work together with this song and with your seva when it isn't editing all day, for those who are afraid to work with me directly in a more unwholesome way on these grounds. So let's listen to this song, and why don't you discern today, right, as in your I am, what is the balanced way to proceed with this conversation and with your use of time today?
As I'm listening, I'm reminded about what is really seva, what is really being service. And I don't think I'm really doing that appropriately. I'm trying to, but I'm not. And I think because I'm in a stuck place still with my own healing, so I want to be able to give like the bread.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm doing is like the broken core zone, the broken heart.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as balancing that, I think I need more time for inner reflection and healing, because if it's just not giving the bread, you know. I'm not. I'm acting from a broken heart, and I'm acting in ways that maybe aren't even helping anybody, even though that's what I want to do. Now I don't know exactly what that means.
Well, I'll give you some choices. You know, so we come from the Father energy is truth and justice. And so last night in prayer and reflection, you know, we were at a point where it was sort of like, I have these waves, and some of you who've worked closely with me have seen me have them, where it's like, this is so ridiculous, I'm going to do like a bull when he gets really, you know. And so I had some moments like that, and we're staying in prayer where about not doing this, but because this is so absurd, there were moments where it was sort of like, the situation I'm talking about, not anything about you, this situation is so absurd, that it was moments of just taking my hand and just, you know, doing that and saying, you know, that there's nothing just about this situation. I have very little time left. I'll ask you to put up today a home video log where I'm talking about trying to manage my time well with what I have from Thanksgiving of last year. And I talk in that video about how I have two big pushes. One is the bread and one is the water. And, you know, from the time that I gift my life, my understanding is that he would like me to, let me just take a minute to talk about our relationship with the two of us. So the first thing that happened when I left after the liturgy for the Food for Eternal Life in Los Angeles was, you know, the call to the garden, and when I found my way to this village, the first thing I did was go into the iglesia. And while I had been in Mexico City in prayer, a lot of how I've prayed over the past year or so, since really understanding more about who I am as a soul, has been very devotional. So there's been, and that doesn't cease, but dynamically what that looked like in prayer. So this is the kind of thing where this is really a teaching for others. Honestly, this is like, for where you really are, a lot of this doesn't even make sense, because you're a little guy right now. So don't worry if it doesn't make sense. You don't have to get it. You can listen. But part of my struggle is that I need a cameraman who can work with me all day while I churn out the teachings during my precious time. And it's not supposed to be you. That's what's wrong. So we're in a dilemma where either I don't get to teach everything I have to gift and gift and gift you as my commitment and even my duty on a soul level, or exploit someone's healing time. And that's part of what you're saying you're torn about. So my feeling is that in a little bit here, as far as choices, well, I'll give you the choices, but let me finish. So I got to Mexico City, and I had a long way of being in prayer that was very devotional, in the sense of standing at the feet of the cross, or being like a river that is there at the foot of the tree. Very much positions of bowing or kneeling. As I've said, to me what matters is that the tree is being watered more than who I am. I don't think about that. If anything, being in the most background has been my preference. And so one of the things he started to ask me in Mexico City when I was spending a lot of time in the churches there was to maybe not always be bent down at his feet like that. And so when I found this town, when I came to this community and I knew this was the garden, the first thing that happened when I walked into the church was he really demonstrated as if I were standing face to face with him, and he would wrap his arms around me and rock me to the right and the left in more of a sense of partnership rather than that inclination I have to sit at his feet. And he was delighted. And he'd been pushing and pushing me to consider what mutuality might look like in relationship. And that's been something that, because I'm more comfortable right as the snow or the soil, that invisible support has been really hard for me to step up to. I'd rather see everybody else doing that. And I'm the other part of the soul. So there's a certain point where I can't do what's comfortable because I have responsibility. So in the video we'll put up today, I talk about my two big pushes, which are the bread and the water. And so post-mortem, a lot of what I'll be doing is with the water. Now, I told him that I'd be willing and happy to continue to serve here in the garden or however post-mortem, like post that time, if he wanted me to come back. And it's not clear to me what he wants right now because we're so behind schedule. And so many of you are still in the earliest stages of healing because there's been so much deception and secrecy and shame about trying to do this relationship building with me. His preference had been that I would sleep through the winter. And then when it was time for Judgment Day, we would get going together as a team. So I leave that to him to decide. Of course, it's hard to leave the baby. The point was that I had asked a woman who is the daughter of God to be active. I asked her about 3 months before I went to the spring if she would be so good as to come to a ceremony on Halloween of 2015 and just bring her presence. And he had organized everything for the baby to come in that night, right after the spring. It was the first big thing I did after the spring. And so he had recalibrated my ovulation when I was in Greece to be for Halloween, and also made other accommodations for that energy of the child to come down. And she didn't come, and she didn't tell me she wasn't coming. And I didn't understand. Part of what I don't understand is why, if there's a call, a request from us, that is blown off. That doesn't make any sense from our perspective. So that means that I've had up some anger I've been struggling with her because I have the baby a year less. So I'm supposed to have till he's 2. 1, if I'm lucky. He won't remember me. I'm working on the letter so he does, if I don't come back until Judgment Day. So, this is the impact if we are asked to be God's hands and feet and we keep trying to control the situation. So, when I got here, there was a great embrace of delight. He was so happy. I found the garden. I was fulfilling his wishes and needs. It's all I'm ever thinking about. How can I represent his wishes and needs well? How can I embody them well? How can I help humanity come out of this terrible multi-frequency trauma and dissociation so that they can be sons and daughters and we can proceed, because we're not functioning as dissociated, broken beings as we so are. How could we not be with the situation being what it is? But that would mean counseling. You can't take this depth of trauma and not have you, for example, have time with horses, time with the garden, time with swimming and all kinds of things you need. Balanced, of course, with what is appropriate seva, which isn't bouncing back to your supervisor, That's not seva. Of course you know that. So our dilemma at this point is that I'm not getting anywhere with the bread. I should be working with Hal and other theologians and other faiths for original liturgy that I leave with you. I did a film shoot the other day with a very gifted shaman about the sacred pipe ceremony and how that's keeping the hearth, keeping the campfire. And if you listen to some of my old video logs, I say, I know that I am the campfire. That's my essence, the campfire we all gather around. Well, the campfire in the eternal is Mother, Father, right? It's the source of light and life. It's the tree and the water. It's the wind and the sun all together. And that makes a fifth element, the snow. So the snow is starlight, that is the eternal light, as a gathering place for the holy people in Shambhala. And I meant to gather you before I go, if we're to have success. And I don't know enough about prophecies, but when I spoke with him, he said there are some consistent prophecies. And they have to do in part with keeping the campfire, keeping the hearth. And I am the hearth, essentially, and we're neglecting me. And then we wonder why we're sick as a world. And we've neglected me from my birth. And you've been neglected. So have those who I'm here to serve with rehabilitation. You're all holy people who have been not only neglected, but terribly, terribly traumatized. So that instead of what should be happening, which is the comfort of company gathered around the warm campfire, that is the nurturing mother and the fair father, everybody's hiding with great shame and fear. And again, nobody's in trouble if we come forward into the truth tent. It doesn't matter what's happened. I've been a model for how you can fall down and still be who you are in your holiness and your goodness. So we're stuck, Andrew. You don't take it on. You're not sticking us. What we're dialoguing about today is how do we stop this cycle? So to continue, he gave me that great embrace, and then a lot of what he's been doing is simply trying to build a bond with me. If you can imagine, on my end, sometimes it's hard to even let him in because I miss him so much that to be unsupported down here and feel him as real, I can't quite hold. So I'm stuck too, in a way. Do miss what is good and right, and be in this limbo garden and these limbo lies is too much. Limbo baby. It's just one big man-made limbo of shame and control and domination, where everybody's got some message about me as this global controller or whatever. Suspicions and lies have been filling people's heads between me and real healing with each of you. So, last night we were just going over everything, and it's like at some point he's like, he wants me to drop everything and just go be with the people who do want me. Because I go into the villages and everybody knows who I am. Here is Senora Krista. And to just start doing liturgy in the, outside, offering the bread. I don't want to leave the garden. I want to keep the garden. But at some point, what is respectful to him? I have to ask myself as his wife and sister. Is it respectful to play this way? No. I have so little time, and one of my big pushes is the bread. So what I started to say is that the shaman I spoke with spoke about keeping the hearth, keeping the sacred. And from the time I was a little girl, I was always almost panicked about the candle in the tabernacle that's always supposed to be lit, the red candle, which is keeping the hearth in the Catholic tradition, keeping the peace pipe in the indigenous tradition. If people were working with me, one of my first priorities for people among faiths would be to sit down with the peace pipe around this and the sacrament and do ceremony for world peace with the global dissociation and the curse of blood. If we were working together, I wanted to do a ceremony where I sat with the Pope and a shaman, and I gifted them the food of eternal life that I've created to empower them then to give it back to me after they bless it within their traditions. And then I bring it forward in reverence to all faiths, not to the exclusion of the Catholic sacrament. But as a little girl, I would sit with that red flame and I would be in a panic. And when I was asked to take responsibility for the food of eternal life in late June or early July, one of the visions I had when I was sitting at the tabernacle in prayer at the Sacred Heart of Jesus Church was of like a black slithering energy leaving the tabernacle. And that's what I care about, that's duality. And it's insinuated itself into the peace pipe and into the tabernacle and into the great hearth that we are as husband and wife here. So I'm going to stay in prayer about how not to be a bull and be so furious with the lack of just behavior around honoring the sacrament and my precious time here. Orthodoxy is really important. And what Eric started to talk about the other day was how the peace pipe has been seriously compromised because people are being casual about it. Now, everybody knows that I tried to convert to Greek Orthodoxy because I don't believe that we should ever be casual with timeless ceremonies for the sacred. And I really like how Orthodoxy has maintained a certain formality to keep the power of transubstantiation, just as we keep the power of the peace pipe if we stay to the letter of the law for the original instruction. So I would be really working with liturgy. Judaism, of course, is huge. My husband is a Jew. He loves that faith as much as I would like to be respected enough that a priest would offer me a Catholic Mass every day while I'm alive. So, for you, my suggestion would be we can decide if you want to continue at all with documentation, if that's Seva, or just with sound files. The amount of hours it takes for you to edit the visual is ridiculous. And it's unfair that I can't have camera and support to document everything precious I leave with the gift of my 47 years as Eleanor Snow, or whatever it will be when all is said and done here, So at this point, his rage was up in the night as far as Eleanor, just go into the say liturgy in the courtyard every day and give everybody tortillas, because he wants the bread blessed and broken for all. Bread blessed and broken for us all is what I should be working with the Pope, right? That there's a way that traditional Catholicism is upheld and that the New Jerusalem is honored with the Catholic tradition as a Catholic. Catholic means unifying. So that doesn't mean that it's a Catholic practice, because it's for the Hindus. And it's for any Jew or any shaman or anybody. That's the free water for all part. So there's a lot of pain this morning about that. I'm at least a year behind with the child and with the bread, the big push for the bread that I talk about in this video log we'll watch today. I'll put up today. I'm not able to be creating liturgy because I have none of my sons and daughters who have the power of Gnostic scripture or the Bhagavad Gita or the sutras to sit with, because of whatever the reason is that we're hiding from me or keeping me in a sense hostage. It sort of feels like I can either be here and held hostage for choosing to try and be one place to welcome everybody, or I can go off by myself and try and further everything. But when I tried to do that in India, and I tried to set up, I asked to have an interfaith group set me up with a mosque or an amin or someone in the Muslim tradition when I went to Istanbul. And no one would. I asked at least 3 times if I could be connected with an interfaith mosque or Muslim in Istanbul. I went to honor Istanbul. And so that's what's happening. And you're not getting the therapy because I need this time to teach on so many things that who you really are, which is a little guy with Judah, not all the time, but that's where some of the trauma is that isn't getting cared for, is also being fallen through the cracks. So there's a lot of immoral logistics. And so part of my decision morally is at least sound files only, including today's. I'm going to suggest you put all this up as a sound file today. Put a beautiful image of the chalice or something, maybe bread that's interfaith bread, just a loaf of bread, something inclusive. Maybe the chalice feels too offensive to people of other faiths. Now, I'd really like, but we're too tired at this point, to get into what's going on with you and Shara and Bart, the possessiveness, the remembering, Andrew, she's my daughter. And ever since that morning when she was so enthusiastic, I haven't felt safe to honor you by having any relationship with her. And she's confused about that too. So I don't get to be with her as a daughter because we don't know what you can allow. And we were both so respectful of you that we shut down our bond so you could have her to yourself. But that's just more of the trauma, right?
Yeah, I don't want that. I want you both to have that relationship. I don't want to do more of the possessiveness.
So we would want to clear the air when we're not tired, maybe tomorrow. Because I know you don't. But she loves you. I love you. We don't want you to have the trauma reenactment that your special gift is being taken over by me. Everybody already feels like I'm doing that all the time, right? Everybody feels I'm taking over all the time. That's one of the big global programs, is if I'm carrying the lantern with the lamb in it, which is my essence and my sweet gift. One of them is to carry the lantern with the lamp with the lamb in it to guide us. I'm the global controller. So I'm not going to really work too much with Shara Ann until the three of us can process how to do that where it's not a trauma reenactment. Out of love for you and her love for you. And we'll sort it out, because bread blessed and broken is part of you being in healthy seva. So maybe between now and tomorrow, I would suggest taking some time with the Old Testament and looking at who Judah is to you, what you understand about Judah. I would do that over a few days, so we don't have to talk about that tomorrow. But take a few days to read Isaiah. I wouldn't worry about Jeremiah, the prophet. I think there's a lot of sick programming that happened to you around that book. And I think it's too triggering and confusing from what you've told me about Jeremiah being a part of you.
Yeah, that book, I don't think.
Yeah. So take some time with Isaiah, and then take some time to journal with her about what your ideas are as twins to work with bread blessed and broken. And if everybody's going to continue to hold this stance of suspicion toward me, and I have precious little time to work with one of my big pushes, which is the bread, what would you like? What is in your highest good around that? We can talk about that tomorrow. For today, don't forget that in the pool, you recovered some of your day self in a safe way, and that part of you isn't the reason you were unsafe, and has a lot of personality and goodness too. So think about what it means to draw upon the good friend that you are in the day world in a way that doesn't frighten you, that's synonymous with being totally dissociated.
That just helps to remember. This is all just, this whole conversation, emotional because first because I was to realize how just like wrong this is, what's happening, and how it, what that means for you and how it affects you, and then I just want to be able to, I just want everything to be able to be good. You know, I want to be able to do all the cameras, or for you to have the cameras, and to be healing, and to everyone to come, and it's just not, I'm not capable of that.
No, that's why it wasn't fair the past couple of days, was it? And I love you so much, Andrew. I want you to be you. I think the sound file for today, and then being able, this is you without having to do all that military yes ma'am to me, right? Or having to be that scary floaty bunny state. I'm so grateful to see the sweetness of you and the grief of you. And I know that part of what's been going on is you've been pulled in 1,000 directions. And my time is precious, and I should be able to sit at a laptop and write Daniel Jacob letters and emails to people and see if anybody would have me on a radio show to talk about who I am, or do some kind of press so that there's some celebration and acknowledgement while I'm here, that I am here. There's so many ways that I'm cut off from the smartphone that you're letting me borrow stalls my email, so I can't check email, right? It makes a flashing before it opens. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to sit in your personal room and get on your personal computer as more intrusion into your boundaries and your space. There's been enough of that for all of us. So I'm cut off from email for several days now. I call my mother every other day. I don't know what she's been told, but she won't pick up the phone anymore. So, you know, it's not just what's unfair for me, Andrew, right? Intersubjectivity is that this isn't fair to you, right? How unfair. I think you got in touch in your body with when you got up to change the cameras, how that was forcing you back into that robot mode.
Yeah.
And so that is wildly unfair to you. And I'm clear I'm not going to ask that of you. I'm not going to ask you to do that. The rest I'm not clear on. I'm not clear on if we should document your therapy sessions still. I'm not clear on if I should just walk off these grounds altogether and go to another part of the world or the jungle out of respect for my husband. If humanity won't respect him enough to work with me when I'm here to serve. Again, humanly imperfect, but so happy if somebody would drive up on these grounds. Every day I imagine. I thought on Christmas Day I would serve every kind of pie, or at least scrambled eggs. And so, anybody's welcome. It doesn't matter what the rules say. It doesn't matter, I don't know what's being said out there, so people aren't allowed to talk with me. But if you want, I'm here on the grounds at least for today. And I would love a phone call. I would love someone to walk up to me while I'm sitting on the grass. That's one of the great joys about Eric and Sweet Medicine. There's been a little space. And so if the people I've come to help heal, which are the leaders across faiths and nations, continue to want to turn their back on my offering as the counselor, it makes sense then that I would do the next thing, which is what he says at the wedding party. If all the people you invite don't come, go out into the streets. So that's what he's asking me to do pretty soon. You just go out into the streets. Senora Krista is welcome out there. And I have come to be of service to him. Remember, when I say to him, I mean the hearth. Mother, Father is the heat source of that which is eternal life, which has justice as an